Welcome to the Girl Horror Podcast, where we explore the intersection of girlhood and horror in film and TV. Today's episode, Gremlins Unwrapped, Christmas, Consumerism and the Repressed Feminine, is all about the chaos lurking beneath the tinsel and twinkling lights of the festive season. From its biting critique of consumerism to its reflection of societal anxieties and even its commentary on gender roles, Gremlins is a film that has a lot to say. Whether we're ready to hear it or not is a different matter. In this episode, we're taking a deep dive into everything that makes Gremlins so special and so unexpectedly subversive. We'll explore how the film dismantles the glossy, commercialised image of Christmas, why it uses horror to reflect our cultural fears, and how it challenges traditional ideas of family and femininity. We'll also uncover how Gremlins has stayed relevant in a world that's just as messy and chaotic now as when this film was released. So grab a hot chocolate, dim the lights, and make sure you're following the rules. No water, no food after midnight, and whatever you do, don't turn off this podcast. Let's dive into Gremlins Unwrapped.
Steven Spielberg presents Gremlins.
Like this. No, don't shake it. We're gonna have to open it now. It won't wait till Christmas.
The most unusual gift he ever got.
What is it?
No.
It's your new pet.
Come on, Barney, be a good dog. My dad gave it to me.
Let's take a moment to set the scene for today's episode. Gremlins premiered in 1984, and it's a film that has since carved out a unique place in both the horror and Christmas genres. Directed by Joe Dante and written by Chris Columbus, it's equal parts dark and comedy, a heartfelt Christmas story, but also a chaotic horror. It's not every day you find a film that can make you laugh, scare you, and still give you a warm, fuzzy, festive feeling too. All while being an interesting critique of the Christmas season itself. But that's exactly what Gremlins gives us.
What's going on here?
Little monsters.
Right.
Hundreds of them.
Well, I don't know, maybe thousands.
They've been here too. Billy, what are these things? Where did they come from?
Look, I know it sounds crazy, I know. But in a few hours, you're gonna have a major disaster on your hands.
If you need a refresher, Gremlins is set in the picturesque snow-covered town of Kingston Falls. The film follows Billy, a young man whose father brings home a mysterious creature called a mogwai as a gift for him for Christmas. Gizmo, as affectionately as he's named, comes with 3 simple rules. 1, don't expose him to bright lights. 2, don't get him wet. And 3, never ever feed him after midnight. Of course, these rules are broken, chaos ensues, and the town is overrun by mischievous, malevolent creatures known as gremlins. This film hits a beautiful sweet spot for horror fans and Christmas lovers alike. Positioning Christmas as the backdrop for chaos is a very relatable theme for a lot of people. And that's why this film has stood the test of time with audiences from both sides of that proverbial fence. But Gremlins isn't just about the havoc caused by these little monsters. Beneath the horror comedy surface, it's a film rich with subtext. It critiques our obsession with consumerism, examines the contradictions of Christmas, and gives us a fascinating lens through which to explore repression, particularly the repressed feminine. It's funny, it's dark, and it's perfect for Christmas. In today's episode, we're going to break it all down, from the commercialisation of Christmas to the hidden tensions of Christmas traditions, and how Gremlins gives us a surprisingly nuanced commentary on gender roles and societal expectations. But first, let's start with the season itself, Christmas, and what Gremlins has to say about the way we celebrate it.
You might end up having a little trouble with yours when you see the price tags on this year's hottest Christmas toys. Maxine Block says the people who make electronic games smile when they look at their bank books.
To understand the critique of consumerism in Gremlins, we have to consider the time it was made. The 1980s were a decade defined by excess. Think shopping centres, corporate greed, and an explosion of advertising aimed at creating a constant desire for more. Sounds quite familiar, right? We're definitely living in the aftermath of the consumer boom that came in the 1980s, which is perhaps why this film still hits a point to this day. Christmas was, and still is, one of the most commercialised holidays. But in the 80s, the marketing machine around the season reached new heights. Gremlins taps directly into this frenzy. And here we are decades later, still grappling with the same issues. Whether it's Black Friday madness or the race to buy the year's must-have trends, the commercialisation of Christmas has not slowed down. It has only escalated since.
There are so many of these games available that it's difficult to know which ones to buy, and that's why toy manufacturers are spending millions of dollars in advertising.
In Gremlins, the Mogwai represents the ideal Christmas present. Adorable, exotic, and rare. Gizmo is the kind of thing that would have parents queuing for hours and fighting over in a toy shop. It's basically the 80s version of a Furby, a direct nod to the commercialisation of Christmas in real life. But like so many perfect products, the Mogwai comes with a catch. Its allure is overshadowed by its destructive potential. Something, the consumerist cycle is bad for you. The Mogwai isn't just a present for Billy, it's a commodity. And like so many consumer goods, it's marketed as harmless and magical, but can quickly spiral in chaos when mishandled or overindulged. The rules, don't get wet, don't feed after midnight, could almost be seen as the fine print on a product label. Break the rules and you're left with a town overrun by monsters. It's a cautionary tale about the consequences of unchecked consumerism. When the Mogwai's rules are broken, the Gremlins are unleashed. And with them comes an anarchic subversion of Christmas tradition. They trash the picture-perfect decorations, mock carolers, and turn the festive season into a nightmare. It's as if they're exposing the underlying chaos beneath the polished facade of the holidays. What's interesting is how the Gremlins themselves are depicted as consumers too. They indulge in food, drink, and entertainment with reckless abandon. Whether they're binging on popcorn at the cinema or guzzling beer at the bar, their behaviour mirrors the excesses of holiday consumption taken to a grotesque extreme. When Gizmo starts singing, it's like hearing a tiny angel. But when the Gremlins start singing, it's like hearing a tiny drunken karaoke night gone wrong.
I warned you, Brad!
It's a not-so-subtle reminder that our obsession with having it all during the holidays often comes at a cost. Whether that's financial stress, family tension, or in this case, a horde of tiny monsters destroying your town. Think about the frenzy that surrounds Christmas shopping, the desperation to find the perfect present, the chaos of Black Friday sales, and the pressure to outdo each other with bigger and better presents. Gremlins captures this notion perfectly. The Mogwai is the ultimate must-have, but it comes with disastrous consequences. Through the lens of horror and comedy, Gremlins asks us to consider the cost of our obsession with things. What happens when we value commodities over relationships? Or when we let the pursuit of the perfect Christmas overshadow the joy of Christmas itself? The themes in Gremlins feel more relevant today than ever, which is one of the reasons I wanted to make this episode in the first place. Today we have viral trends for hard-to-find gifts, online shopping meltdowns, Klarna credit card debt, and even more intense marketing campaigns that are all around us all the time, manipulating us into thinking we need to buy our way to happiness. Have we learned anything since the 80s, or have the Gremlins of consumerism multiplied? While Gremlins skewers the consumerism of Christmas, it also delves into something deeper, the emotional and psychological pressures of the season, particularly the hidden tension and repressed emotions that the holidays can bring. It's not just about what we buy, it's also about who we're expected to be during the holidays. In Gremlins, that means looking at gender roles, and how women in particular are expected to keep everything running smoothly in the face of disaster. That's where we're going next.
Mom, what's going on here?
The concept of the repressed feminine refers to the ways that traits and roles traditionally associated with femininity, being nurturing, emotional, creative, intuitive, are suppressed, devalued, or demonized by society. In many horror films, this repression is explored through the monstrous or the chaotic feminine figures who embody the return of what society tries to control. In Gremlins, we see a fascinating interplay between the feminine and the monstrous, as well as how female characters navigate a world shaped by masculine expectations and consumerist ideals.
What is it?
It's your new pet.
You're kidding. Dad, it's really neat. Can I pick him up, Dad?
Sure, go ahead. Just be careful. You gotta be gentle.
I will.
I hope he's housebroken.
Oh, isn't he cute? Has it got a name, Dad?
Yeah, Mogwai.
What?
I just call him Gizmo. He seems to like it.
Gizmo, the Mogwai, can be read as a symbol of the idealized feminine. Cute, docile, nurturing, and non-threatening. He represents a version of femininity that is prized and celebrated because it conforms to societal expectations. But like femininity itself, Gizmo's true nature is complex and comes with rules that, if broken, unleash chaos. I don't know about you, but that is literally a description of me and most of the women I know. When the Mogwai transforms into a gremlin, it's as if the repressed aspects of the feminine, the wildness, anger, unpredictability, are unleashed. The gremlins, with their unrestrained behaviour and destructive tendencies, represent the fear of what happens when control over the feminine is lost. They embody the chaotic freedom of women that patriarchal systems fear. This is a stretch of an argument because I know in reality Gizmo is just a cute girly pop, but it's still an interesting idea to consider. One of the most underrated characters in Gremlins is Mrs. Peltzer, Billy's mum. At first glance, she seems like your typical suburban homemaker, quietly cooking and cleaning while chaos brews around her. But when the gremlins attack, she flips the script. Suddenly, she's wielding a blender and a kitchen knife, taking out the monsters with brutal efficiency. Mrs. Peltzer is a fantastic example of how horror often allows women to break out of their traditional roles. She's not a passive victim, nor does she wait for a man to save the day. Instead, she takes control of the situation in a way that's both surprising and satisfying. It's a reminder that beneath the surface of these seemingly perfect suburban lives, women are often shouldering the burden of keeping everything together, and when pushed, they can fight back with incredible force.
It was Christmas Eve. I was 9 years old. Me and Mom were decorating the tree, waiting for Dad to come home from work. A couple hours went by. Dad wasn't home.
The character Kate is one of the few female characters with significant screen time in Gremlins, and she provides a stark counterpoint to the film's festive cheer. Her now famous monologue about why she hates Christmas is a moment of startling emotional honesty in an otherwise playful film. In her monologue, Kate reveals that her father died while trying to play Santa Claus, breaking his neck while climbing down the chimney. This confession brings to the surface the emotional labour and suppressed trauma that often go unnoticed at Christmas. It's a moment that feels out of place in a traditional holiday story, but that's exactly the point. It forces us to acknowledge the sadness and trauma that's often hidden beneath the surface of Christmas cheer. Kate herself is a fascinating character because she's quiet, reserved, but deeply wounded, a perfect reflection of how the feminine experience very often plays out in horror. Quiet suffering until the moment it can no longer be contained. Kate's bitterness isn't just about her personal tragedy, it's a critique of the unrealistic ideals of perfection and sacrifice that the holiday season demands of everybody, and especially of women as the head of the domestic sphere. We can look at Mrs. Deagle, the miserly town Scrooge who wields power and cruelty without apology, as an example of somebody who's rejected the traditional expectation of women at Christmas in the 80s. She's an older woman who is not a nurturing or warm, traditional grandmother archetype, but instead she embraces greed and domination, typically masculine traits. Mrs. Deagle's death, thrown dramatically from a window by her chairlift, courtesy of the Gremlins, is both karmic and symbolic. It reflects society's fear and punishment of women who reject prescribed gender roles. She's portrayed as monstrous in her own right, a warning of what happens when women step outside the bounds of the acceptable feminine. The Gremlins are fascinating when viewed through the lens of the monstrous feminine, a concept coined by film theorist Barbara Creed. The monstrous feminine is often used in horror to represent social anxieties about women's bodies, sexuality, and power. Consider the way the gremlins behave. They revel in excess, they disrupt social order, and mock traditional norms and social expectations. The famous scene of the Lady Gremlin, with her exaggerated makeup and aggressive flirtation, is a grotesque parody of femininity, highlighting how female identity can be distorted and demonized when it doesn't conform to expectations. In Gremlins, the gremlins themselves are the physical manifestation of that return. They're chaotic, excessive, and impossible to control. Everything society fears about the uncontained feminine. Weirdly empowering to watch, but maybe that's just me. Today, we see similar gendered expectations at Christmas. Women are often responsible for organising, cooking, gift-giving, and maintaining the emotional tone of the season, while their contributions are frequently taken for granted. Obviously, this isn't true of everybody, but I think we still have ways to go before Christmas is a gender-neutral holiday. The tensions explored in Gremlins are still very much alive. So as we watch Gremlins this Christmas, let's ask ourselves, what happens when we continue to repress the feminine? And more importantly, how can we create a space for a more balanced understanding of gender roles, one that doesn't demonise chaos or demand perfection? From Mrs. Peltzer's quiet strength, Kate's raw vulnerability, and even Mrs. Deagle's greed, Gremlins gives us glimpses of the feminine experience that are rarely explored in traditional holiday films. But while Gremlins critiques the repression of the feminine, it also taps into a broader cultural unease, one that goes beyond gender to question the very tradition of values we associate with Christmas. We'll explore that next.
It's the night before Christmas, and all around the stores rush the Santas in waiting who need to buy more. Burdened bags in their hands, stalking cabs on sore feet, the shoppers who can't stop make way down the street. It's gifts that they're after, it's loving they seek, even if embarrassed when our camera takes a peek.
I could be buying that for my girlfriend, but I'm not.
Oh, you aren't? Oh, that's what was my question. Who were you buying that underwear for? You jumped when he was rolling on you.
It was for my wife.
Oh, are you sure?
Merry Christmas, yes.
There is tension in faces, strain about eyes. With the deadline so near, who cares what the size?
It's really been a hassle. I don't want to go through this again.
Did you get all your shopping done?
Not really. I still got some more to do.
When are you going to do it?
Tonight.
The adults so wound up in the swirl of their panicking. They leave grandma on trunk, children babysat by mannequins.
Yeah, I think I'm a panic buyer. I decided that I'd shop early this year, so I bought 2 presents early, and then I brought the other 30 today.
Got about 12 people to shop for now, and 10 minutes, and it's starting to close in on me. So I'm getting a little nervous.
Merry Christmas.
Oh, thank you very much.
Christmas is a season of contradictions, a cultural paradox, if you will. On the surface, it's a time of joy, generosity, and togetherness. But underneath, it's fraught with tension, financial stress, family conflict, and the pressure to create a perfect Christmas day. In Gremlins, these tensions are front and centre, as the idyllic Christmas setting is torn apart by chaos. The film uses its small-town Americana aesthetics, complete with twinkling lights, carolers, and cosy snow-covered streets, to amplify the shock when the gremlins invade, disrupting the traditions we hold so dear. Nothing says Merry Christmas to me quite like a horde of tiny green monsters committing arson and light murder. Billy's family embodies the pressures of creating the perfect Christmas. They are in many ways a microcosm of the holiday stress. His father, an inventor, spends the holiday season trying to prove his worth through his quirky but mostly useless gadget inventions. His mother plays the role of the dutiful homemaker, decorating the house and preparing festive meals. But beneath the veneer of holiday cheer, there's a growing sense of unease, one that the arrival of Gizmo and the subsequent chaos brings to the surface. Side note, Billy's dad invents a bathroom buddy that shoots toothpaste everywhere, but somehow Gizmo is the family's biggest liability. Make it make sense. Anyway, Gizmo himself represents the ideal Christmas gift, the thing that promises to bring joy and connection. But as the rules are broken and chaos ensues, Gremlins critiques the unrealistic expectations we place on material things to deliver happiness at Christmas. The Gremlins are a direct assault on the traditions we associate with Christmas. They mock carolers by performing their own twisted carols. They crash a holiday party at a local bar, turning it into a scene of hedonistic mayhem. Even the iconic imagery of Santa Claus is corrupted as the man dressed as St. Nick is attacked by the creatures. Through these moments, the film questions whether our traditions are as sacred and stable as we think, or whether they're just as fragile as the ornaments on the Christmas tree. One of the best scenes is when a gremlin bursts out of the Christmas tree, attacking Billy's mum. The tree, a symbol of family togetherness at Christmas, becomes a sight of violence and terror. It's as if the film is asking, what happens when the symbols we rely on to create meaning turn against us? Are these traditions truly comforting, or are they built on shaky foundations?
And it's news, too, good news, that now there's a turkey for every size family. 12 to 25 pounders for large families, and a new 5 to 10 pound variety for smaller families.
What do you want for Christmas?
A new bike and a pencil sharpener and a new rupert book.
A new bike and a pencil sharpener and what did you say? What was the last thing?
A rupert book.
A rupert book.
Yeah.
We will try that.
Kingston Falls, with its quaint main street and friendly, well, apart from the blatant xenophobic, neighbours, feels like it's plucked from the front of a Christmas card, but the town's harmony is superficial. Mrs. Deagle's cruelty towards the town people, the financial struggles of local families, and the gossip that flows freely through the diner all hint at a community barely holding it together. The Gremlins expose these cracks, forcing the town to confront its darker underbelly. The 1980s, when Gremlins was made, was a decade obsessed with nostalgia for the 50s, a time often idealised as purer and more wholesome. But Gremlins uses its Christmas setting to show how nostalgia can also be a mask that obscures the messiness and contradictions lurking under the surface. Sounds a bit familiar, right? While the Gremlins bring destruction, they also force a reckoning. By disrupting tradition and tearing apart the town, they create space for something new. In a way, their chaos is transformative, asking whether we might need to let go of some of the traditions we have to find more authentic ways of connecting. These days I've learnt to enjoy lots of Christmas traditions, but I think this film has always resonated with me because I grew up with a fairly non-consumerist Christmas, and I definitely had one where gender roles weren't really followed. Ever since I can remember, I've been repulsed by overcrowded shops full of plastic tat and people turning into zoo animals to fight over spending more money than their peers. That's why I love this film. It heralds that message in a hilarious way, highlighting a very depressing truth about society, but also encouraging the positive message that there are better ways to connect than to fall into capitalist hell. What makes Gremlins so compelling is its refusal to provide easy answers. The film doesn't outright condemn Christmas tradition, but it doesn't wholeheartedly celebrate it either. Instead, it holds up a mirror to the holiday season, showing both its joy and its absurdity. It's a reminder that chaos and destruction are just as much a part of life, and perhaps even Christmas, as comfort and joy. In today's world, the pressures around Christmas have arguably only gotten worse.
As we all know, Friday is Black Friday, long considered the granddaddy of all shopping days. But this year, it's not just retailers looking to cash in on the holiday shopping season. Instagram and other social media platforms are also getting in on the act. Julia Borston has more.
This holiday season, Instagram is trying to shift from being a place to follow brands and browse products like a magazine into a virtual mall, a new destination for shopping.
Social media creates a relentless comparison game, with influencers showcasing picture-perfect festive celebrations. At the same time, we're living through a cost of living crisis, and the financial strain of creating a magical Christmas can be overwhelming for so many. Not to mention the hundreds of people who won't be able to celebrate Christmas at all. The chaos of Gremlins feels like a fitting metaphor for these modern struggles. an exaggerated but truthful reflection of the pandemonium we experience trying to keep traditions alive. So as we gather around our Christmas trees this year, let's ask ourselves, are these traditions bringing us joy, or are we holding on to them out of obligation? And if the Gremlins came to our town, what cracks in our holiday facades might they expose? Food for thought, I think. Ultimately, Gremlins is about more than just Christmas. It's about the hidden tensions and contradictions that shape our lives. In the final section, let's tie everything together in a neat little bow and reflect on the film's enduring legacy as a Christmas horror classic.
You know, it's one of those things where you know you're going to be known for something. So why not be known for something that's still really popular and kind of beloved, and people use expressions like it's an American classic, every Christmas comes along and they show it at Christmas time, you know, every year along with A Christmas Story and Die Hard. It's one of those 80s movies that has a bit of a Christmas theme in it, so it sticks. I mean, it feels amazing.
What makes Gremlins stand out is its seamless blending of two opposite genres, Christmas and horror. Christmas films are traditionally heartwarming and comforting, while horror thrives on fear and unease. By combining the two, Gremlins creates something different, a film that's both festive and unsettling, joyful and grotesque. The juxtaposition of twinkling Christmas lights and monstrous chaos amplifies the impact of both elements. When you watch Gremlins, you're constantly oscillating between laughter and terror, which mirrors the emotional highs and lows of the festive season itself, really. Or it does for me, at least. Released in 1984, Gremlins was part of a wave of horror films that pushed boundaries, using humour and satire to explore societal anxieties. Alongside films like Ghostbusters and A Nightmare on Elm Street, it showcased the versatility of the horror genre, proving that it could be funny, self-aware, and culturally insightful too. While most Christmas films reaffirm traditional values, family, generosity, etc., Gremlins interrogates them. It's a film that asks uncomfortable questions about consumerism, tradition, and the darker side of Christmas. This subversive edge is what made it endure as a cult classic. Before Gremlins, Christmas horror was a niche subgenre, with films like Black Christmas. Gremlins expanded the possibilities of what Christmas horror could be, setting the stage for future holiday horrors like Krampus and Rare Exports, both of which owe a debt to the mischievous Mogwai.
St. Nicholas is not coming this year. Instead, a much darker, ancient spirit.
Those are hooves. Elk or a goat? What kind of goat walks on its hind legs?
His name is Krampus.
Gizmo and the Gremlins themselves have become huge pop culture icons, quite ironically in my mind. The whole point of the film is to not buy trash you don't need, but now Gizmo is one of the most commercialised figures in horror. Together, him and the Gremlins represent a spectrum of human nature, from our desire to nurture to our capacity for destruction. The design of the Gremlins, with their scaly skin and manic grins, is instantly recognisable. They've become shorthand for playful anarchy, a testament to the brilliant practical effects and creature design that brought them to life. What makes Gremlins so timeless is its ability to entertain on multiple levels. It's a fun, chaotic ride with plenty of laughs and scares, but it's also a thought-provoking critique of Christmas. It asks us to re-examine the traditions we take for granted and consider what they mean in a world that's often far messier than a picture-perfect Christmas card might have us believe. For audiences, Gremlins is an annual reminder that the holidays aren't just about perfection. They're about embracing the chaos and finding the joy in the unexpected. The legacy of Gremlins can be seen in films and shows that blend humour, horror, and holiday themes. From Krampus to The Nightmare Before Christmas, its DNA is everywhere. Even modern horror comedies like Shaun of the Dead owe a bit of a debt to the tonal balance Gremlins perfected. The film's meta-humour and self-awareness feels way ahead of its time, paving the way for today's genre-bending hits like Stranger Things or The Cabin in the Woods. Whether it's the merchandise that flies off the shelves every Christmas, or the endless fan theories dissecting the rules of the Mogwai, Gremlins continues to capture the imagination of new generations every year. Its place in both Christmas and horror tradition seems to be cemented for the foreseeable. For all its chaos and carnage, Gremlins is such a comfort film to me. It leaves us with a strangely comforting message that it's okay when the festive season doesn't go quite as you planned. Sometimes it's the imperfections, the burnt turkey, the last-minute presents, the gremlins swinging from the Christmas lights, that makes the season memorable. So as you watch Gremlins this year, remember it's not just a film about monsters. It's a film that celebrates the messy, unpredictable, and ultimately the human side of Christmas. Over the course of this episode, we've explored Gremlins from multiple angles. Its critique of unchecked consumerism during the festive season, its use of horror to reveal anxieties around technology and societal change, and its commentary on the repressed feminine within traditional family and community structures. Each of these themes adds another layer to the film, making it more than just a creature feature. It's a lens through which we can examine the complexities of the festive season and the cultural pressures that come with it. Like many of the best films of the 80s, Gremlins doesn't shy away from engaging with the concerns of its era. It reflects the fears, hopes, and contradictions of a society in flux, using its playful premise to ask serious questions about the world we live in. In 2024, we're still grappling with the same issues: consumerism, environmental concerns, and the balance between tradition and progress. Watching Gremlins today, it's striking how much it has to say about our current moment. The Mogwai's rules feel like a warning about our inability to control the consequences of our actions. Whether it's overindulgence, technological advances, or environmental exploitation, these are themes that have only grown more pressing over time. The cultural footprint of Gremlins is undeniable. It's a film that has transcended its original context to become a perennial favourite, revisited and reinterpreted by each new generation. For me, Gremlins captures the true spirit of the Christmas holidays, not the polished, idealised version we see in adverts, but the messy, chaotic, unpredictable reality. Watching Gremlins as an adult, you realise that the scariest thing in this film isn't the monsters, it's capitalism. And on that note, I'd love to hear what Gremlins means to you. Does it bring back memories of your first time watching it? Does it challenge your view of Christmas traditions? Let me know, because half the fun of a film like this is the conversation that it sparks. That's it for today's episode of the Girl Horror Podcast. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and join me in January as we embark on a whole new year of girl horror by discussing the much anticipated new release of Nosferatu. Before that, I will be providing you with a whole episode going through the original Nosferatu film and its iconic place in the horror film history. Yes, I am going to be that person who encourages you to watch the original before going to see the new film. Either way, thank you for 2024, and here's to another year of girl horror deep dives in 2025. Don't forget you can find us on Instagram at girlhorror, GURLHORROR, for more updates, including behind-the-scenes content. If you want to help support the show, please consider leaving a review wherever you listen or buying a £3 coffee from our Ko-Fi page. If not, why not share this episode with a friend who loves girl horror too? Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and in 2025, let's make a promise to each other to always stay girly and stay horrifying.